Welcome to Pachehra Talks. Today we are going to talk about Azure SQL database. What exactly we're going to talk about? We are going to secure it, and of course, we need to go through the understanding or the overview of Azure SQL database so that we can refresh our memory. And as this is our specialist series, so we need to understand the security aspect of it, like how can we secure it in an Azure architecture. All right, so this is our topic for today's video. All right, we will create some diagrams to understand from in the particularly security aspect of it. But before that, let's understand what Azure SQL database is and why someone should use it. All right. So the very first thing is Azure SQL database is a managed service. What exactly we mean by that? It is managed by Microsoft Azure, right? It's a PaaS service, platform as a service. Okay. Which means it's designed to make database management easier and more efficient, particularly for business and developers. And all the infrastructure overhead or admin overhead will be taken care by Microsoft Azure. Okay, we already talked about shared services long before many times. So this is just to refresh our memory and specifically for the new folks who are trying to just learn the security specialist series uh, that we are going through right now. Okay, so it's a managed service, Azure SQL database PaaS service, which means Microsoft takes care of the infrastructure, including hardware, software updates, and patching. So, what happens? What is the benefit of this thing? If it is a PaaS service and these things are taken care by Microsoft, it reduces the admin overhead. Okay, it reduces admin burden or overhead on your IT team, allowing them to focus on more strategic tasks rather than routine maintenance. So that is one of the benefit of using PaaS services or in our case, Azure SQL database. Now, Azure SQL database can automatically scale up or down based on your workload demands. Not exactly, okay? Because this is a SQL DB, right? This is a SQL DB. This is a relational database, relational database, okay? Which cannot scale, not exactly like horizontally, but vertically you can change it, not automatically, but you have to change it. And for horizontally, you can do sharding and things like that. So, and of course, if you go with the higher SKU, like premium SKU, then you can have your read replicas, and you can move all your read workloads to this replica and manage it. All right. Then high availability. This service includes built-in high availability with 99.9 or 99% of uptime SLA if you choose zone, right? So it has an inbuilt highly high availability. You need not to think for it, plan for it, and work for it or configure it. So it uses data replication and automatic failover to ensure your database is always accessible. Okay, and you need not to plan for your DR and things like that. It has a failover group configuration and geo replication. Both are little different. Replication inbuilt. Okay, so this minimizes downtime, ensuring your applications are always available to users, which is critical for business continuity. So that's what it offers, right? So it offers scalability, managed services. People can focus on their work rather than doing daily maintenance, and of course, minimize downtime, ensuring your applications are always available for the users. And then it has so many inbuilt security features like encryption, threat detection, and a lot more that we will understand in the next part of the same video, this video, because that's the main topic. Okay. It also has automated backups. So you need not to think for any other device, any other third-party vendor to take care of your backups. It has inbuilt backup capabilities. This ensures that your data can be restored at any point within the retention period, providing peace of mind against accidental data loss or corruption. Apart from that, it also gives you performance tuning. Okay, so you can, or it includes feature like this: automatic indexing and performance tuning recommendation, which of course optimizing database performance can be complex and time consuming. And these features help ensure your DB runs efficiently, improving application performance without requiring any deep database expertise. I think I should make it 14. Yeah, it's better. Right. Then this Azure SQL DB can integrate with Azure's artificial intelligence and machine learning services for advanced analytics and predictive modeling. So it has seamless integration specifically with data services. Okay. Then we have service like Elastic Pool along with this SQL, and Elastic Pool allow you to manage multiple databases that share resources, adjusting as needed. So this is particularly useful for SaaS applications with multiple tenants, providing a cost-effective way to manage varying database workloads. And uh, you have multiple databases, and that's another use case. And it never goes very high for the usage, but it spikes sometimes. So you can go like for those predictable workloads, you can choose elastic pools as well. Okay. And uh, these are the wonderful features that it offers. Now, if you think why somebody will use it, let's take out points. Uh, why use it? From the features, the features will help us to decide why we use it, because it has those features like reduced operational overhead. That's our first feature that we have mentioned, what it is: PaaS service, right? So by automating routine tasks, and it's a PaaS service, it allow your IT team to focus on your innovation and business growth. Then cost efficiency, right? Because pay as you go pricing and the ability to scale on demand help manage cost effectively. And a lot of inbuilt features. So of course you need not to hire those skills or those people to build those things and pay for the third party resources for backups and DRs, right? Then it also, if you are looking for enhanced security and compliance, you should go for this particular service, because it has built-in security features and compliance certifications which help protect your data. If you are looking for reliability and performance, that's your choice. For database, like high availability is inbuilt, automated performance tuning is there, and global distribution is there, that we talked about all those features. So these features will help you decide this database. And if you need to modernize your application from legacy, you go for this service. All those new latest features comes in the managed services, and then it goes to the legacy way of SQL database. So this is just a refresher for Azure SQL database, what it is and things like that. But now it's time to understand the security aspect of it. So let's get started. Let's suppose this is our uh, Azure subscription. Okay, this is our Azure subscription, because we need subscription to create resources. Okay, now under Azure subscription, when we create IS resources, we create in our protected private network. So let's suppose this is our private network. Why are we creating private network? Because Azure SQL is public service or PaaS service, right? Now let's suppose this is our Azure SQL service that we have created here. Okay, This is our Azure SQL. It's not inside the virtual network. It's a PaaS service. So it is outside. And let's suppose there is one application is running. Okay. This is one application, which is the front end, just to understand the concept. And this is our backend Azure SQL. So this is connected to Azure SQL at the backend. Now it's time to secure this piece of the entire architecture. Now, the very first thing is, let me make this a little smaller. Let's start with the very first thing. Somebody has to create it, and somebody has to manage it. Somebody has to log in inside it, which means authentication and authorization. Okay. So we have to protect this layer first, right? So how can we protect it? It's very simple. How? Because we have been protecting our resources from authentication from the very first video of this. So what we need to do, we need to have a centralized identity management. And if we are in Azure, we're talking about Azure SQL. So Azure AD or Entra ID. So using Entra ID for authentication provides a centralized identity management. Okay. Very first thing is this part, and it offers multiple other features like multi-factor authentication and conditional access. So what we need to do, we need to just simply go to the Azure portal, Azure Active Directory or Entra ID, create users, and have access to the Azure SQL database. Now there is two things, here. For example, we have user. Now this user wants to access this, it will simply go to the portal, right? It can access through the portal, right? And another thing is he needs to access the DB. So DB users, two things. So both things can be done through this Entra ID. It's not just the RBAC, but also the Azure AD user as a SQL DB user. The very first thing is we need to achieve this, we need to first under the Active Directory admin section of Azure SQL database, we need to set Azure AD user or group as the admin. That is the first thing to achieve this. And then we need to connect to the SQL database using a tool like SSSMS SQL Server Management Studio with the Azure AD admin credentials. And we need to use our tsql commands to create database users for the Azure AD users or groups to assign roles. It is like create user, give the same username as Azure AD user, and make it from external provider, and it will help you. Azure AD would be the one stop for all the authentication authorization, even for the SQL databases, users in the SQL database, and the admin are back, right? Now, we need to ensure Azure AD authentication. So ensure all connections to the database are using Azure AD authentication by disabling SQL authentication where feasible and configuring applications to use Azure AD tokens for database access. Okay. So we need to SQL users from external provider, that is our Entra ID, and disable any other authentication. So that is the first piece. Authentication piece is done. So what we did, because we have Azure AD here, right? This is our Azure AD, and all the authentication will be taken care by Azure AD because it has linked with Azure subscription, and we have enabled this on the Azure SQL as well, right? Now, the second thing is that we need to protect is from the networking side. What exactly mean by that? Because this SQL is not inside our private network, it is a PaaS service, but it also has something called network firewall, which is like with every other PaaS services in Azure. So this network firewall will help in uh, IP restriction and filtering. Okay, and we can use this to allow or deny any traffic. Now, the best part is we can use it to deny all and enable something called private endpoint and make it private to the private network of ours through private network. Now, private endpoint. Now, once the private endpoint is enabled, this SQL will get the private IP address from the subnet of our private network, and we can block all the public access. So if some guy is trying to access this SQL from outside, let's suppose from sitting here, and it tries to access from here, so it will not be able to access it. But if it has a VPN, it accesses this network, has a connectivity here, then it can go from here and access this SQL. So it would be private connectivity, and we can deny all the public through the network firewall. Okay, so identity is protect and our network piece is also protected. Now this is private endpoint, so it has IP there, NIC there, and we can apply NSGs as well. Okay, nowadays we can. Private endpoint is more secure, better than service endpoint, but we can also enable the service endpoint as well, right? Now this network segmentation, because we are creating subnets, also involves dividing your network into different segments or subnets, each isolated, secured independently, limiting the potential impact of the security breaches as well, or the blast radius. So networking part is done, and in the network we had two things: private endpoint, NSGs on private endpoints. Then we also had network firewall, and we denied all the traffic. We also have allow Azure services. So it is more like what kind of infrastructure or requirement is there. But of course, the one that we discussed is the more secure. All right, so identity is done, network is done. Now it's time for the data. So data, whenever data comes, the main thing is encryption. Now here we have multiple ways to encrypt our data. So that encryption is at rest, TDE. We also have encryption at transit or in use as well. In use, we have always encrypted, and in transit, we have TLS, right? So let's try to understand this one by one. So encryption, TDE, all the data which is coming in here in the Azure SQL database. Let's start with the TDE. TDE is transparent data encryption. TD encrypts the entire database, including backups at the storage level. This encryption is transparent to applications, meaning no changes to the application code is required. So how can we do that? Simply go to the Azure portal, under the security, select TDE, toggle the switch, enable TDE. By default, it is on. And now the main part is the key management here. So by default, Azure manages the encryption keys. However, you can use your own keys stored in Azure Key Vault for added control. So we can add here one more piece, which is key management via Key Vault, okay, which will enhance the security aspect of it if you are managing your keys by yourself, okay, because we also have option to customer managed key here. Now, TD provides a straightforward way to encrypt your entire database, ensuring that data is protected at rest without requiring changes to your applications. Using custom managed key enhances the control over the encryption process. Now, we have always encrypt. How it works? Always encrypted ensures that sensitive data is encrypted both at rest and in transit. And only client applications with the necessary keys can decrypt the data. So the encryption and decryption occur on the client side Rest of the time it is all encrypted, keeping the data encrypted while stored in the database, while moving, and while in use. So how can we do that? We simply need to install SQL Server Management Studio, which includes support for the always encrypted. Okay, it's a feature of database itself. It's if you're running a SQL on not on Azure, even though you can use this one. So what is the main thing? Main thing is ensure that your client application uses ADO.NET, JDBC, or ODBC drivers that support always encrypted, because application is needs to decrypt it while working. Okay, so we need to connect to our SQL Azure SQL database through SSMS, and then we need to right click on database, select task, then encrypt columns. Use the wizard because it opens the wizard, simple wizard. Keep click on that and finding the right option like a column master key CMK and a column encryption key which is CEK. The CMK can be stored in the key vault to make it more secure. Now select the columns you want to encrypt and specify the encryption type, deterministic or randomized. Okay, apply the encryption configuration which will update the schema and encrypt the specified columns. If you want to learn more about it, we have already created one video in our past playlist. So we are more focused upon from this perspective here. So update application code, because modify application to use parameterized queries and specify the encryption settings for encrypted columns. These are things needs to be performed for the always encryption. And we need to ensure that the client libraries support always encrypted and is configured to use the correct keys. Right. So these are the things that we need to do to perform this always encryption. It has a dependencies on the application as well, but it will make sure your data is encrypted at rest, in transit, and while in use. Now, there is one more thing, which is TLS, right? We talked about TLS. So how it works, TLS encrypts data in transit between the client application and the Azure SQL database, preventing eavesdropping and man-in-the-middle attacks. How we enforce TLS in Azure SQL database? Enforce TLS by default. Okay, so ensure your client applications are configured to use TLS. So we need to make sure our client applications are as such. Okay, now ensure your client application trusts the server's TLS certification. For custom certificates, install the root certificate on the client machines. That piece can be something which will be interesting. Now, these three main part is done. Now the extra thing that we can do, the very first is threat detection. Yes, threat detection in Azure SQL database is provided through Advanced Threat Protection ATP. It monitors your database. Yeah, it monitors your database just like any other ATP or threat protection for potential threats and suspicious activities such as SQL injection attacks, anomalous login attempts, and any other unusual behaviors. How we can enable it? Simply go to the portal, navigate under the security or on Azure SQL Database security section, select advanced threat protection, enable ATP and configure the notification settings specifying email addresses for the alert notification. Simple, it's there on the portal. Now, ATP provides continuous monitoring and real-time alerts for the potential threats, enabling you to detect and respond to security incidents quickly. So this proactive approach helps in mitigating the risk of data breaches and unauthorized access. So it is more like we have applied all the security. This is the monitoring, continuous monitoring part, and let you know if something bad happens or about to happen or somebody trying something. Okay, threat detection. Then we have to keep on assess the vulnerabilities. So vulnerability assessment is there. Okay, and it's a service that scans your Azure SQL database to identify potential security vulnerabilities and provide recommendations for remediation. It helps ensure that your database is compliant with security best practices, industry standards. And how can we enable vulnerability assessment? Simply go to the Azure SQL database. Under security section, we have vulnerability assessment. So we need to enable it and configure a storage account to store the assessment reports, because it creates those reports, and we can run assessments as well. We can review assessment results and implement the recommendations. So we help in identifying and addressing security weakness before they can exploited by attackers. Regular assessment ensures that your database remains secure and compliant with industry standards, reducing the risk of data breaches and improving overall security posture. Then there is something interesting, which is data masking, which is not we are securing from outside but from the inside, which means data masking, dynamic data masking (DDM). Uh, it means we are securing the sensitive data in the result sets of queries, so making it unreadable to non-privileged users. As I said, internally, it's nothing to do with from the external people, but internally we have admin, super admin, and simple users. So we can mask the important data like credit card so that they cannot see it, like phone number or social security number. So those things are masked for the non-privileged users, and it is a wonderful feature. And we always get more lot of questions in our certification exam from DDM. So DDM helps protect sensitive data by ensuring that it is not exposed to unauthorized users, even if they can query the database. Yes, they can query the database, but they cannot see the exact data. Like in credit card, everything is XXX. There might be 2 or 3 digits available, right? So that is there, and of course, we should have auditing in place, which is something is very important and always helpful. So to enable auditing to track database activities, and auditing provides a detailed log of database activities, helping us monitor access and usage patterns. Okay, if something happens, it will help us to figure it out and fix it. Then there is something we can think backup. I think we should add backup and recovery as well in the security video, because this is something automated backups with point in time restore capabilities is a wonderful feature. And if something happens, this will help us to restore. That's a part. That's why I'm putting it here in the security. So apart from that, I think we have almost covered everything. One more thing I think we should add about the application, because ultimately it's application on the front end, which is talking to the database. So we need to secure application design, include the use of parameterized queries, helps prevent SQL injection attacks and other common vulnerabilities. We should have all those CI testing in place so that there would not be any vulnerability from the code side, enhancing the overall security of your application and database. Okay, so this is application, rather secure application. So in the end, I think we should conclude by talking about the important measures that we talked about in summary, just to have this in our subconscious, or just to refresh, it will help. So the very first part is why these measures are important. We talked about why, and everything would be concluded. The very first thing is data integrity. Okay, data integrity and confidentiality. If you have uh, seen the zero trust video of mine, whatever we are doing, these are some pillars: CIA, availability, confidentiality, and integrity. So protecting sensitive data from unauthorized access and breaches is crucial for maintaining trust and complying with the legal requirements. So these things, authentication thing, will help us in doing this, and authorization. Now availability was the second thing that we should CII, as I said, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Ensuring your database is secure helps prevent downtime caused by attackers or misconfiguration, and it is available for the correct users. Okay, so it is from both perspective. Then compliance, if we are managing any compliance, adhering to industry standards and regulations protects your organization from legal and financial penalties. This networking piece, like everything is private, and this encryption thing, like everything is encrypted, will help us. Definitely, these are the part of almost all the compliance. Right, then we can talk about like operational efficiency, because implementing security measures reduces the risk of data loss and breaches, which can be costly and time consuming to address. So operational efficiency. Okay. And then finally, maintaining a strong security posture helps protect the organization's reputation by preventing data breaches and security incidents. So we can say reputation. And how can we achieve that? By all these points, but specifically, we keep on checking threat detection, vulnerability assessment, data masking, auditing. These all points will be there to maintaining this strong security posture. I think with that, we can close this video, and I hope it was informative and you guys learned something new today. So, in this summary, first we talked about some wonderful features that Azure SQL database offers, and through those features, we convince ourselves for that why should we use it, what are the benefits of using it, and then we talked about how to secure this PaaS service from all different layers, from identity, network, data, monitoring, backup recovery, secure data masking, threat detection, and everything. With this, let's close the video. Thank you for watching. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye bye.